session of the Emerge Sports Conclave. Esport is the buzzword that we've been hearing since the pandemic and post-pandemic. I'd like to invite Mr. Supratik Sen, CEO of Unilaser Venture Sports, along with Mr. Vivek Raija, who's also an investor in sport and currently heads investment for Emerald Media, to take over on all things future of esports. Over to you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harini. Welcome to everyone to this panel. The topic of our panel discussion is esports. But before introducing, to you all to the panel guest, let me just quickly set the context of esports. So in terms of gaming, basically there is real money gaming, which you can say fantasy sports, Rummy Circle. Then there is casual games like Ludo, Teen Patti, which is mostly ad supported. And then there is esports, which can be described as organized multiplayer video game competition where professional players take part either individually or as teams. But the big difference here is that esports is fun to play as well as watch. So that's a big difference in otherwise other forms of gaming. Now, in terms of size, just to tell you, today India has almost 375 million gamers, and all of together, the overall size of the market is about 750 million. And this is expected to grow to about 1.6 billion in the next 3 years. Now, esport component is actually currently the fastest growing component in this whole space. Currently, it has, about 4% of the online gamers at 17 million and about 9% of the overall size at 68 million. But don't go by these numbers yet, because if you look at the parallels in the West, esports is now challenging the major sports. I mean, you look at 2018, where Super Bowl attracted 100 million viewers. The finals of League of Legends attracted almost 99 million viewers. So that shows the power of this this medium. With that, let me introduce you to the esteemed panel that we have with us, and I'm really proud to introduce them, starting with Akshat. Can't see him. I just noticed him somewhere here.
I'm here, don't worry.
Yeah, here he is. Yeah, he is. So let me introduce you to Akshat by first talking about this historic day in Indian gaming space. You all know Nazara Technologies, IPO'd, and it got subscribed 175 times. That's almost 6 billion in interest level. Well, the overall online gaming market is just 1.6 billion. So you can understand the latent demand for Indian gaming. And a huge part of this success for Nazara goes to Akshat and Nordwin Gaming, of which he's the founder and MD, because they form a significant part of Nazara. So Akshat, is a serial entrepreneur, and he's had multiple exits in the past, and he's the pioneer in this whole esports space. That's Akshat, and we'll obviously talk to him more. Then I have with us Arvind Iyengar. If I could see him, I don't know if he's joined yet or not. Hey, hi Arvind. Yes, so Arvind actually started with as a consultant with McKinsey, then moved to KKR, which is a leading private equity fund, and then joined as CEO of Sports Interactive, which is a leading sports data analytics and fan engagement company with over 250 clients. Quite frankly, and this is my personal experience, that their behind the scene work actually makes sports consumption such a pleasure on the digital environment. Otherwise, TV was such a linear medium that you couldn't really interact with the sport. And that's the big change that his company brings about. And then the third panelist we have is Sameer Pitalwala. If I can, see him somewhere. Hey, hi, Sameer. Okay, so I've known Sameer for a long time, and Sameer understood digital media much before it became a fashion. He started the digital division at Walt Disney and then embarked on his entrepreneurial journey with Culture Machine, which he founded and was a CEO, which went on to become the largest multi-channel content network. Now he obviously leads the business efforts for Epic Games, which is an $18 billion American video game and software development company. So we are fortunate to all these people. Now with that, I'll pass on to Supratik, who could introduce Michael to us.
I think his connection is still unstable because I've asked him to unmute, but there's no reaction. It's frozen. So could you just continue, Mr. Vivek?
Yeah, sure. So, see, Michael is the CEO of ESL, and I've not had the pleasure of yes. So I've not had the pleasure of meeting him. But Michael, if you could, introduce yourself, it'd be helpful. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Hi to all the panelists. Hi to Akshat, first of all, and congrats on your huge success lately. Both sides, big step, not only for your company, but also for the whole India ecosystem. Pleasure to be with you on a panel today. So I'm Michael. I'm running ESPL as CEO. We are basically running esports leagues globally. We started in a couple of countries, mainly Southeast Asia. Now we are active in 20 countries around the world, including India, Scandinavia, launching right now. And so we are very, very deep in esports. We focus mainly on the digital part of it, right? Not that much on physical events. What's due to COVID not possible anyway. And before that, I was leading esports.com, a company which is has the best domain in the space, of course. And we ultimately sold to ProSiebenSat.1 Media Group, the biggest media house in Europe. So I'm in the space for a couple of years now. My background is investment banker, living in Central Europe and being digitally all over the space.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks for the introduction. Okay, so let me begin by asking you, Akshat. 17 million audience, 68 million in mostly brand sponsorship revenue, and I'm sure we all know Nordwin almost accounts for 85 to 90% of that. Where does esports grow? Grow and go from here. And obviously, I'm asking you because you've seen this journey when literally esports was nothing in India. So take us through the journey then and up till now, and how do you see this going forward in the next 5 years? And also spend some time on how do you see the whole media rights evolving? Because in a sport, media rights play a big role, as we can see with cricket. How do you see that element also?
Yes, Mr. Supratik.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Akshat.
So a lot of questions, and I do want to go ahead and leave space for everyone else. So I'll be succinct about these. Esports in India needs what I call mainstream legitimacy, not necessarily in the way we have conversations right now where, there's an IPO, that's the financial community that comes in, or the gamers community, which is already very endemic to this, or brands that are there. I think there's a fundamental shift that needs to happen for combining two of the questions you said, which is media rights and value as such. Right now, media and value in esports is intrinsically captured in sponsorship, right? And that's where, and now we have endemics and non-endemics, and non-endemics are the people who will go out and try to reach the same TG. And then there are the endemics who are either the publishers or the device manufacturers or the OEMs or the data service providers. And they kind of come together and coalesce. The value of this is to go ahead and make it mainstream. And the way when you want to make it mainstream is whether we like it or not. And I was just listening to Sanjog in the last panel. India watches TV. Yes, we watch a lot of YouTube. Yes, we watch a lot of Hotstar, but India still watches a lot of TV. And if you look at the price comparison between a 10-second ad watched by 1 million people on TV versus a 10-second ad watched by 1 million people on OTT, there is still a differential, right? There is a fundamental differential that sits in that arbitrage that is available. And as long as media planners are going and sitting and still going and saying, hey, 80% of I have a budget of $1 million, like, I don't know, $100 million, 70% of it goes to TV, 25% of it goes to digital, 5% of it goes. That's how the waterfall falls, right? So if you're always going to be competing predominantly in the space of digital, and gaming and esports is a subset of digital because there's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's advertising, there's everything else. We're always going to be paying for the lower pie. And I think one of the aha moments needs to have is we are not part of that lower pie. We are actually part of the bigger pie, which is the mainstream advertising, right? So the conversation now has to be, how does esports go ahead and legitimize itself to be the second most watched sport in the country after cricket? And kind of go ahead and beat and cricket is also too wide. How can we beat everything that is not India cricket? Right? So if there's a Ashes, we should be watched more. If it is the Premier League, we should be watched more. If it is Pakistan versus Bangladesh, we should be watched more. And consistently, if you can go ahead and track that, that's the movement which is there. So that's that answers one of your big other questions. And the other one, where do we go from there? Again, a 3-minute quick chat which is there, and I'll go run you through what is called the causality route. Right? India is great in cricket because something strange happened. And I'm then oversimplifying this, just so hold your. Indira Gandhi wanted to go ahead and make India famous. We had gone to war with China. After that, we had and Pakistan and India wanted to build pride. We won the Asian Games bid. Asian Games was supposed to be watched by India. Everyone wanted in India to watch it. We nationalized a couple of TV companies so that we could go ahead and get TV sets available to Indians to go ahead and watch the Asian Games. Every mohalla got a TV set. India did not do well in the Asian Games. In 1983, we won the World Cup. We became the best at something that India was never at. We suddenly had this moment of pride saying, we are the best in the world at something. And as a country that is coming out of all of that, it gave us hope and pride in something. And I think esports will deliver that for us. We are a country which is, and it'll come from mobile. It'll come not necessarily from PC because again, the delta and the arbitrage of something that is happening in the rest of the world, where, for example, if there's an Indian who's playing Counter-Strike right now, he's 10 years behind Michael's part of the world, right? Because those guys have been playing it for 15 years. You will not go, everyone will put in the same 2 hours, 3 hours every day. You will never scale it. But you can scale it in mobile games. And if you go ahead and look at mobile, we actually start ahead of the rest of the world. We have the advantage of going in and having a very young population. We have time, we have interest, we have everything else. And I think the aha moment will come again is when India will not just win medals, and that's an Olympic movement problem which is there, is where we will be the best in the world. The Cricket World Cup was not an Olympic sport that we won. We just need the sense of pride where as Indians, we can be number one at something in the world, and we can be. And that's the other thing that is going to be really important.
Yeah, Supratik, go on.
No, so I'm sorry, I just kind of, jumped in and jumped out. So Vivek, you've posed the question to Akshat.
Yes.
Yeah. He's an old friend and a legend in this space. He loves to be, told that. I'll go next to actually, I'll come back to you, Akshat. But on this one, I'll go to Michael. Michael, for you to be able to position in the Indian market, you all are doing some incredible work with PC in your part of the world. Mobile has to be centered here, and you all have been doing it. How do you see it all evolve, and how do you see more and more players like yourself actually join this whole race in India?
So basically, I can confirm what Akshat says, especially around mobile gaming, right? And we fully believe that mobile gaming and mobile esports is the next big thing. And I also agree that India and a couple of other countries has surprisingly an advantage now, because when 10, 15 years ago, all the superstars from Sweden, from Germany, from US started to play, there is also a culture still playing PC, but we don't believe it's going to be long term, right? And also it's due to technological changes, right? You have in India, you have Jio, who suddenly make connectivity available to everyone, right? Everything is moving into cloud computing. So it's so easy and reachable to play. And we see step by step happening that in Europe, in US as well, but it's really step by step, right? It's not, we divide the world into PC, mobile first and mobile only countries. And surprisingly, the mobile only countries has a huge advantage. And I think the race starts, and a couple of governments see it already, that the next big medal in 10 years, 15 years from now, maybe 5, will be from esports, right? and countries who didn't have so many medals in the past suddenly can take it all. It's accessible, it's cheap. You don't need that much. Like if you want to start a Formula One career or golf or something, you need to have a lot of money. This is all gone in esports, especially in mobile esports. So how we enter the country, basically, we position ourselves. We are not playing the Champions League, right? We are just in the mass audience, and we want to create an infrastructure that you can start easily, find your team, climb up the ladder, and then find your spot in the very pro teams or the top leagues, in the top tournaments globally, right? So we want to make it accessible also to every Indian gamer to start to test the league, start to test the tournament, and then find your way up. And digitally, if you have talent, if you're improving, we can find you and we can help you to make the step up. And I think this is what's it all about. And we're focusing on the digital infrastructure itself. And our goal is to have globally as many players as possible and create the service to them to be basically filtered out to the very top.
Sure. Okay. Vivek, do you want to go for the next one?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll bring in Samir now. Samir, so, we all know India is a great consumption economy. Everybody is looking at India, young population, digital first and transaction ready. Since you have, built a business in the creator community side, do you see a top class globally relevant gaming developer company coming out of India? Or do you think we are going to just take others' game and organize events and get sponsorship? Or do you see creators coming and creating those top games out of India?
I think that's a great question, Vivek, and thank you for having me on the panel. If you look at a parallel, about when in 2012, India had roughly, I think at that time, about 40 million monthly active users on the internet. And very quickly, when at that point of time, YouTube began to grow, there was not more than 30 to 40% of the total internet base in India was using video. And then substantial things changed after Jio's launch, and you went from basically a country which was not even in the top 10 on YouTube anywhere in the world. As a country, we used to sometimes do far less viewership than some networks in the US would do on YouTube. That was just the size of what our audience was. And in 5 years, we kind of grew to not only become the largest country on YouTube in the world, but also have the largest channel on YouTube in the world. So I think that ecosystem also has some parallels now with the way the gaming ecosystem is going, because at that point of time, a majority of the content globally was created globally and consumed locally, because people with a certain kind of privilege had access to phones and data pipes which were fast enough to watch YouTube. I think that's similar to what we are seeing here, right? It's also similar to the advent of satellite television in India. Most people grew up watching, foreign programming, and then it shifted vigorously to local and never went back. There is no doubt, given the way the gaming ecosystem is evolving, both in the form of publishers as well as in the form of consumers, as well as in the form of creators, that there is going to be a substantial shift towards being localized.
Yes.
And with the kind of work that we and other game engines are doing in the country, I see. I think it's a matter of time where you see indigenous publishers publishing high quality games. And while real money gaming has been the start of it, and you need companies in that space to validate that space, that okay, it's real money, but still it's gaming at the end of the day. And I do think that the larger IP based businesses are still to be built in this country.
So can I just add on to that, Vivek, to Samir itself? Samir, Unreal is a big piece for you all. How do you see Unreal evolve and get to more, game designers and makers in India?
I think Unreal is already popular with game designers and makers, but at a certain threshold, because it's typically looked at rightly or wrongly as a sort of high-end game engine to push, especially if you want to do cross-platform in the case of PC, Xbox, and generally stuff which has higher quality metal to push better quality graphics on screen. But I think really the work that has happened over the last 5 or 6 years is the expansion of Unreal into other verticals beyond gaming, which is whether it's in architecture, engineering, construction, automobile, whether it's media and entertainment. And that's caused now we're seeing an explosion in the sheer number of developers, because no longer is it just restricted to gaming. It's now proliferated into many other industries. Pretty much anything that touches the world of 3D is, if you want to visualize something, you're most likely going to use Unreal Engine. Now, the second order effect of something like that is that your mass pool of talent, and while there is a specialization which is evident whenever you use a tool in any direction, you can use a typewriter to write any kind of book. But the important part is you have a whole bunch of people who know how to type. And similarly, you have a whole bunch of people in India now who know how to use Unreal Engine, and they're growing exponentially. So that, I think, is the most valuable part of the puzzle, because skill sets can move between each other, because you have a large population educated in the use of a tool, which we believe will be substantially important to the future of sort of the world in general when it comes to the 3D version of the internet. So I think that, Supratik, is really where we see it, is that while the core gaming audience will continue in terms of game dev audiences will continue to learn Unreal, it's the surround sound around it which is now causing, I feel, an explosion in development skills. Just like India soon enough, had a lot of code skills, and then because of the Infis and the Cognizants and the TCSs, and somehow, they did emerge from their capability to move from services to product with the likes of Flipkart and Ola when we found the consumer internet boom, which happened over the last 15 years. I do feel that similarly, this is the bedrock for what's supposed to come in the next 10, 15 years.
Great.
Okay, so yeah, Suprit, go on.
No, so I think I just wanted to bring Arvind in. Arvind, I think this is a very interesting space for your unit to also come in the sense, what's the big piece that you would like to add to this segment or the sector? And second is, we ourselves feel that there is, from the standpoint of where the business is, where do we find good relevant data points as far as India is concerned? Do you see that as a good space for you all to also plug in as far as India?
Yeah, I think, look, for us, we've been looking at esports closely in many different ways, obviously without necessarily the depth of expertise, what stuff that Akshat and Michael were talking about, but we cover, 20 different sports around the world. And, cricket, football are all large sources of revenue. And I think a lot of what Akshat said is really what we see in an India market, saying, what's it going to take for esports to become popular, right? And popular to the next level. And the answer to that was less about getting more gamers, right? But more about getting more consumers. How do you create an experience where everyone is watching esports? It's a compelling proposition on broadcast or OTT, so that, especially in a country like India, right? If you look at social media platforms over the years, you take Twitter, India is one of the countries where the trends of percentage of people who are actually putting out tweets versus consuming just content without actually creating things. India is notoriously just high on consumers versus creators per se, right? And so I think a lot of what we've thought about is to say, how can you almost, if you look at what happened with Kabaddi, as you'll be very familiar with, and making that sport so viewer friendly, make it sexy for everyone to watch, right? How can you do that with esports in particular, which is already quite digital, which has many streams, but also simplifying it in a way so that audiences can follow it, right? And I think the path that we see for esports is really to say, how's it going to become one of the top 3, 4, 5 sports from a consumption perspective in the country, right? And again, Akshat made a great point about India and 83. And I think when you think about the cricket journey, 2 watershed moments, right? Kapil Dev lifting up that trophy in 83, and then Mike Mascarenhas doing everything he did to really commercialize things in the early 90s. And we are at a stage where that commercialization is going to come much faster. So how do you quickly get to the point where you're creating high quality gamers, probably in mobile, where there will be an opportunity for India? And then how do you just make sure it is a cool experience so that fans are following it? I think the two things that we struggle with in terms of just figuring out the overall angles, or one which we're excited about and one that we don't have all the answers for. The first, which is bread and butter to us, is just data capture, right? And unlike, I'd say, cricket or a lot of other outdoor sports, esports is really easy to capture a lot of information just on the back of computer vision, AI, ML. So you can get a phenomenal amount of richness of data and statistic that goes out to just literally say, what are the trends to make it easier for a fan to follow, but also trends and strategies when someone's playing Counter-Strike or when someone's playing Dota or when someone's playing LOL, to look at it and say, here's where certain strategies are working better, and use that into starting to train players, right? And looking at gamers itself and getting really that sports analytics element of it going. So that's an area we're starting to look at. The thing we've wondered, and I think those answers will evolve over time, is just what the right monetization models are going to be in a market like India, right? Like, are you better off being a league that's organizing it? What are the models from a team dynamic? What are you looking at doing in terms of just, can you get this to be mainstream and broadcast and then look at it as a traditional sport on the back of rights, sponsorship, etc. And so those, I think, will take a bit of time to pick up in India. But again, in India, I think you figure out the audience first and then the monetization will come. We love to sell on the promise of monetization often, as opposed to the actual things kicking in itself. But we're already seeing a lot coming in with mobile gaming in particular in terms of how a lot of that working. So that, I think, is the one piece we're looking at.
Okay, so again, this is a question to all of you. You know, we are obviously going through unusual times of COVID. You know, and at least from where I look at it, there is a dichotomy here for esports. Obviously, there is a natural upsurge in people wanting to, play and watch esports. But then there is this, compulsion of not being able to organize offline events. And therefore, if you're unable to do so, how do you create that content for people who want to watch it? Obviously, it seems like there is going to be some time before we are out of this. So during this period of COVID, how do you see this business evolving? Akshat, maybe you could go.
It's a depth and a width problem, right? So Vivek, you've invested into OML, you've known that kind of thing, right? So
yes,
what is a cricket match? Is a cricket match for the people in the stadium? Monetization wise, no, it's probably just going to break even there. The state federation will make some money, which is there. There's going to be some on ground, which is there. It's a nice big. It's a really big studio, right? It's a really kick-ass, really good-looking studio where people jump down. So every time you want to go ahead and do crowd shots, there's girls with bangles out there. There's kids jumping around. There's people dancing with the India flag, which is there. So it gives you what I call shoulder content very, 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 very quickly, right? The entire monetization theory around offline events is either an activation problem for brands, which is actually monetized, since Arvind was talking about it, and every country has a very simple, every brand has a very simplistic cost per contact or a cost customer acquisition outreach cost, right? So if you're an FMCG company, you'll be 300 to 400 rupees. If you're a BMW, based on the kind of TGs which is there, it's approximately going to be 50,000 rupees approximately, but you'll make that up as part of your marketing plan. So the purpose of offline events has to be very clear in this ecosystem. Is it that you're building it for colorful studio? And if it is there, then you can put a smaller studio and think like TV, think like media. You don't have the Oprah Winfrey show or the Tonight Show with Jay Leno having 5,000 people there, right? You just go ahead and have a select audience, and it needs to look good and look good, and you can build an audience around it. If it is about an activation or opportunity for your sponsors and your brand partners, then you make sure that the quality of the audience is coming at that event and that is succinct. Otherwise, you can do bio bubbles very, very easily, right? It doesn't matter. When for us in our bio bubbles is, hey, the kid is not playing at home. He's going to be playing in a studio. We're going to put him in a hotel. We'll go ahead and do the networking. We'll use the banquet hall. We'll still spend the money, but I don't have to go ahead and put it in the Tyagaraja Stadium outside, right? There is a value to put it in Tyagaraja Stadium to go ahead and have the grandiose, really good view for it. But that monetization either needs to come in from media rights or it needs to come in from sponsorships. Yes. And understanding the loop of what you are doing, why you want to do an offline event and what the purpose of it is extremely important in this construct which is there. So offline works really well for us because we believe offline, multiple chats with different partners, which is there. I think COVID will go ahead and add a multiplier effect of 2x to 3x onto offline engagements with talent at events. So we personally believe a ticket which used to be 1,000 rupees will become 4,000 rupees. And then someone else will go ahead and watch it for 200 rupees at home also, or 50 rupees at home also. So we believe both a upscale of events at physical events and a downscale of content, which allows more people to go ahead and come in fairly quickly with Google Pay and UPIs and everything coming in there, will create the value proposition.
Understood. Samir, you have any views about these times, this COVID times, and how do you see the esports business?
I think it's actually going to be like Akshat said. Physically, it's one of those sports where most of the programming is completely digital anyway, right? So you really don't need the physicality of the sport is fairly muted compared to more contact sports or the regular physical sports that we love watching on television. So what we are seeing is sort of like a surge in the use of upscaling the kind of quality of content and just the dramatic nature of it by investing in more solutions for just digital broadcasts. I think that's what's going to kind of really grow really fast, is having these wide-scaled sort of narratives, but doing it inherently digitally. So I do feel that the world's not, especially with esports, I feel that's a trend which will continue to grow as opposed to fairly large physical locations.
Understood.
Yeah. I think, Michael, do you want to add to it?
Yes, I think that overall, we really also in content creation believe in the digital part of it. And I think that overall, looking at how the esports industry was created in the beginning, and ESL was basically the front runner, it was a copy-paste situation from traditional sports, right? So everything was built around big events. Everything was built around sponsorships. And there is a huge expectation in terms of media rights. And I think what we see right now is the consumer behavior changes a lot, right? And I think that it's for us really hard to estimate how it's gonna turn out. But what Akshat also said is, and this I truly believe, that we need to look as the market on Facebook, what happens there, or on TikTok, what happens there. We are in this space, right? We are not that much comparable to traditional sports. We are in this space. And this is where content creation and content consumption comes from. And I think that we are having a shift from macro influencer to micro influencer to very much authentic content. And we, let's say, as the market participants, need to develop the infrastructure, and the market will do the rest itself. So we strongly believe in authentic content creation, but we don't know how it's gonna look like, because the gamer will decide. And I remember vividly, and it really changed my mind when I spoke to Carlos from G2, I think one of the biggest teams in the world, and he said, "Hey Michael, so we did a big studio show, right? 50,000 euro, 10 minutes of content, and we had, I don't know, 5 million views and made this money. And then we won a cup. I went out of the stadium, just make with my iPhone some comments, costs zero, result exactly the same, right? And I think this is something that that we will see, and in the future towards authentic content. And one other thing in terms of sponsorship, talking about BMW or all the other big brands, they were used in the past to set up sponsorships because they cannot do a mistake, right? It's just the way how it's done. But I think what we expect in the future is that CMOs and CFOs will ask much more for return on investment. And return of investment is measurable in the digital space, right? Today you have CPM and CPCs, and this is all transparent. And I think this comes to a mind shift also from that perspective. I would say we won't see this big sponsorship in soccer or something like that again, but I was proven wrong yesterday with a huge Manchester United deal coming from the startup industry. So I was like, what happened? All our assumptions are wrong. But I think in the long run, I take it as an exception. And I think also what we saw, there will be a mind shift. It will happen from one day to another, right? The ship is sailing slowly, and suddenly everyone will see, okay, there is a change, and suddenly a lot of money will come into that. So I think that in terms of attention and recognition of esports, there is a big change already. And I think it will come also from the business perspective. All the brands are now coming slowly but surely, but I think sooner or later there will be FOMO coming, and suddenly all the money will be directed to the industry, and then the infrastructure and content creation will be there, and it will be done by the community.
I'm going to just jump in quickly in here and just echo what Michael has said. Shubs, you've gone and done one of the most, when I had not even had the ability to do this, you had done use Cypher that nobody could go ahead and think of doing it at that time. And that was a view on this. And Samir, you've gone and Epic's gone and done Fortnite. There is a power to think of gamers not as just gamers. Think of them as youth, right? This is, I'm not saying we're WWE and not there, but think like that. Think that this is about sports, entertainment, and youth together. There is marshmallow dropping stuff in Fortnite where there are more people concurrently watching that, but they're gamers, right? They're also esports guys. Don't bucket. So don't go get into a quick rush to bucket people into saying, oh, this is an esports gamer watcher. No, he's a youth of the country, probably going to be 16 to 24, likes WhatsApp, likes Facebook, likes Disha Patni, and they like those things because they live in this country. They talk in Hindi. They watch Mirzapurs for sometimes, and then there's crossovers. I think the power of going and doing this is not running the road less traveled. It is about building your own road. India will solve this on its own. Our idea is not going to be taking a copy paste, because India doesn't behave like that. It will be our playbook. It's the IPL playbook. Nobody thought IPL could have happened in the country of India. We ran that playbook. Shooks, you ran that crossover with entertainment, with music. Your song still is one of the cooler ones. Samir, you guys are doing phenomenally. Vivek, you've got things with OML, which is there. I think the crossovers of music, comedy, entertainment, Bollywood, the ABCDs of India with gaming as the underlying structure is a much better construct to look at rather than think of it like a silo.
It's a fair point.
No, so I like the fact that, Akshat has come the question on us, but I love that fact about him. Now, Akshat, let me, as we are just digging deep onto it, you've gone through the gamut of the journey, Jet Synthesis, Turtle Entertainment, Nazara, now Crafted. And I think, you've given it a real fillip to this whole space. PUBG needs to come back. And I think somewhere you did state that there's a leak possibility. Now, why am I stating it is, in Use Cypher, we struggled because, finally you need a long-term proposition with a a game publisher. How do you see this evolve? Because that's the play where it moves from the advertiser sponsorship market to the media rights play. And I think Vivek and I have been, speaking about it through the last few days, and we didn't have the answer. And the best person to answer is you right now.
I don't think publishers know that answer either. So publishers have tried very actively, and Michael knows this in his experience in life. Multiple publishers have tried to go ahead and launch their own leagues, right? H1Z1, the Smite League, Overwatch kind of does well in the US as such, which is there. No, and the same publisher, say Activision Blizzard in this case, will try different experiments. They'll have a StarCraft experiment, which is a fairly open experiment. They'll have an Overwatch and a Call of Duty experiment, which is a closed ecosystem experiment. Riot will go ahead and do something with League of Legends, but do something very different with Valorant. No one knows the answer. The answer here is you have to go ahead and ask who the publisher is. If the publisher says, I'm a media company, they will keep media rights close to their heart. If the publisher says, I am a technology platform or I'm a technology company, they will not care about media rights, because media rights are basically a marketing tool for them to go ahead and do it. And they're happy to go ahead and leave that because their game will become big. So a Valve goes and says, we're a technology company, guys. Right? So understanding the way that every company thinks, and Activision Blizzard, when Mike and Avi Morheim were leading it, they were trying to become a media company. They've very quickly gone back and said, no, we are actually we're a gaming company. We're not just a media company. Media is good to have rather than what our core is. Understanding from a publisher's point of view what your core is will allow you to go ahead and engage better on terms that are actually more amenable for partners to go ahead and do. Because things will change, things will evolve, partnerships will change. But if you can go ahead and build value, and this is not just named value, Shubs, this is real value, whether it is shareholder value, whether it is whether it is a player ecosystem, whether there is items in the game that allow teams to go ahead and monetize better and have some kind of rev shares, which is there. Having a holistic discussion the way you would have it if you were running a pure sports program, where the franchise, the team, the player, the league, the broadcaster, the advertiser, and the IP owner are all invested in it and not cannibalistic to each other, is the solution.
So how do you see it with supposedly a PUBG? Do you see it come through with it? Do you see this evolve?
So my answer on PUBG is I hope they come and Krafton brings that back in the chat with the government to go ahead and get it back. But once they come back, I think it'll go through a very quick discovery process of what works. Does a league work? Does a cup work? Remember, there are already some global structures already available for it, right? There is the PMCO, there is the PMPL. So all of those are global structures that are currently running. What will work for India versus, it's the ICC versus BCCI problem, right? What Krafton will do for PUBG in India is basically a BCCI India domain thing. They'll also be part of the global structure where there are multiple countries that are playing, and how that synergy goes from a zero to hero story is something that you'll have to go ahead and figure out how.
Okay, so Sameer, if I may ask, you've been in a media company in the past, and media companies, as they grow bigger, they are tempted to consolidate through the value chain. You're a creator today, but you want to be a distributor, and then you want to own the platform and have the consumer. That's the typical way, even if it doesn't make sense. When you look at the overall esports ecosystem, obviously there are players, there are league operators, there are publishers, game developers. Do you see at some point in time consolidation happening? There is that temptation of, if I'm a league operator, I need to necessarily own the titles. You see those kind of things happening, that kind of consolidation, or you think there is enough, or you think there is obvious conflict of interest and that won't allow it, or you think there is enough within your own space you're operating that you don't need to consolidate? So Sameer, yeah.
There's enough within your own space. Yeah, I mean, think about it from the perspective of in a gaming company like Epic. We've been around for 30 years. And the first hit I played from Epic was Unreal Tournament back in like 2001. And then after that, we had a couple of hits, but we didn't have a monster hit until Fortnite. And that's, one of the foundational companies in computer gaming. Very few have been able to kind of continuously innovate and just be great at creating IP, but also creating bedrock technology. So I think it's in the case of OTTs, Netflix and the others had the ability to go vertically integrated, and that I think is now kind of a done deal. But I do feel that the larger technology companies will have a play in it. But as of now, I think it's too complicated. Just doing cloud right is hard enough. Doing cloud gaming right is even harder. And then doing cloud gaming with IPs is far harder. And these things take a lot of time and muscle to build. Anybody who's built a business knows that you can't do everything in 1 year, even if you work 20 hours a day. So even after 30 years, we still have Unreal Engine. Now we are growing faster and faster. But even for a firm, at the cutting edge like Epic, I do think there's some things when you look at it, don't seem like a clear vertical integration path, especially all the way into distribution and platforms in the sense of actually viewership and so on. So there'll be always enough and more corners in a world as big as gaming for people to grow and bloom businesses inside of.
So I just wanted to add to that, Samir, just to ask you. So Fortnite is a big, is a massive play for you all. It runs from PC to mobile, console, all of those. Plus it runs the solo, duo, squad, dance mode. Even if we keep it to squad, it's the mother of some of the games that will come in the future as well. How do you see this piece actually play out? Again, it's a heavy game, so compared to the PUBG or the Free Fire, it's been differently received in India. How do you see this journey through now?
Well, I mean, what I can talk about right now is that we are very keen and curious to see how we can grow within the Indian market on all fronts. So we are, the fact is, I think the timing is right now for, having games which are far more than just games, which are almost cultural events by themselves. So I think from a timing perspective, Supratik, I think India has a huge appetite for entertainment and experiences which have been brought on by the subscription-based video platforms. They've only proven that the ability to have immersive worlds and people, live inside of those will continue to grow and will in fact move from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions because what you're seeing on a flat screen, you want to experience that, and players like to have agency inside of whatever they are experiencing of a larger world. And we're seeing a lot of crossovers also happening globally with Fortnite. Whether it's sports like Neymar Jr. recently, has been announced in next season, to a whole bunch of packed IP slate. So, I think we're all kind of excited to see what we can do in India and the region in general.
Just like the Mandalorian piece, do you see something happen in India as well?
I mean, I think it's, everybody puts the efforts in to do what's right for the Indian consumer. So I guess those efforts will bear fruit whenever they happen to happen.
Okay, so I think just a last word from all of you. What are the 3 things you think are important and critical for esports to go mainstream in India? And, you guys can go one by one. And it's okay if you say government involvement is not necessary. But yes, you go with Arvind, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think a lot of it we covered in various forms, right? But I think the first is how do you make esports mainstream? And if you just look at that journey with other sports, right? Again, there's this old saying, Indians are not really fans of cricket, but they're fans of cricketers, right? Whether that's the Fab Four, whether that's Kohli now. And so I think one of the things Akshat even talked about is how do you make gamers to a large extent larger than life personalities and really get into hero building, right? Which is something Kabaddi has done really well. So that it's someone that people want to follow, right? So I think that's one, large aspect that really needs to get figured out as you just continue to get that to drive consumption. Second is I think all sports follow kind of a virtuous cycle, right? If you go to basketball in China, grassroots setup, leagues happening, player comes out, Yao Ming does well, aspiration created with next young kids saying, hey, I can join the NBA. And then that just goes round and round. Happens with badminton in India when Saina Nehwal goes or PV Sindhu goes, and then you're actually seeing medals being won at Olympics, and then suddenly you see little girls out there playing badminton. How do you create that as well? And therefore, how do you get to a level of excellence and pick the right sports? It may not happen in the next year or 2, but what are the sports that are going to get mainstream, and where can we at a global level get that level of recognition so that more youth are following the game? And then I think the third is just finally figuring out what and again, my view is all very much from a consumption perspective. So leaving monetization aside, what is the ideal viewership experience to get more and more Indian consumers to watch this, to make this mainstream, right? And obviously there's a lot along the way that needs to be done to get more people as gamers, more that needs to be done across the way. But I think if these three big pieces are sorted, it'll kind of fix everything going forward.
Anyone going next? Michael, Samir, anyone?
Yeah, I can. So first of all, I think that it's happening already, that esports is on the way to become number 2 in India or globally in Europe, behind soccer, number 2. It's just a matter of time, right? The only thing we can do or what can be incentivized is how to speed it up. But if it takes 10 years or 2 or 3 years, this is the only difference, right? So it's gonna be number 2, and everything else, developing new content formats, developing government support, and all of that, it's just basically speeding it up. And I wouldn't underestimate the government support, because if the governments are saying that esports is traditional sports, and we see the discussion very much in Germany, it has multiple effects on basically the infrastructure behavior, support for small teams, you know, to support them and overall. So I wouldn't say per se that government support is not needed. It's helping. But whether it's coming or not, it's just a matter of time until it becomes true. So we are on the way. If you look on the average participant age in esports and other traditional sports, you see all the young people are around esports. The average age is, I don't know, 15, 20, 25, depends on the game. You go to the traditional sports, and you almost start about, I know the numbers from Western Europe. So you start around 40, 45. In baseball, it's 60 plus. So it's coming whether we like it or not. The only thing we can change is to speed it up.
I would add to what Michael says. I think generally there is a matter of timing, and I think we are now, over the next 10 years, we're going to see a much faster growth rate, because all the supporting stacks are already there. You have a very good, you know, sort of fiber line, and you have very good sort of, you know, all the usual stuff which you normally talk about in your first 4 slides in your deck. All of that stuff is now there. Whether it's mobile phones. I think hardware generally is still a problem in India. While we all talk about the kind amount of mobile devices, we don't talk about the quality of the mobile devices here. But, you know, fact is, I think over the period of the next 5 to 6 years, Moore's law will do its magic, and people will upgrade and do a lot more on that front. And you already have an excellent payment system, probably the best one in the world right now, which is coursing through the entire fintech market. So I do think that all the places are there. Part which could improve is, I think publicers like us can do a lot more. I don't think there's enough of activity in the market, consolidated activity. I think the rise of more indigenously developed casual games will only grow the sector more. I think that again is a big impediment. And beyond that, it's just a matter of time.
Okay, I think Akshat, I think you've already covered this, but let me just take one question from the guests that we have, and maybe I'll put that question to you, and then we can end this session. So the question from Pranav Gandhi is, fan viewership in sports is in large part driven by team loyalty, athlete following, or the fact that a fan plays a sport. How does esports plan to drive fan viewership and engagement and build this ecosystem and bring in non-gamers to watch esports? I'm sure all of you have covered at some length, but maybe you could just throw some last light on.
So I'll do this twice because I really wanted to go ahead and chip into the last question, Vivek. You had asked the 3 points.
Okay, please.
And I'll definitely answer this question. I actually believe a certain amount of brand differentiation. This is going back to the opening statement you had made for this session. There is real money gaming. There is casual gaming. I would love for everyone to go ahead and have nomenclature correct, because it is a really important. It's not about the government. It is not about people. It is not about. It's just commonality of interest, right? A has to be A, B has to be B. Just so, and I think it needs to be publisher-led, which who say this is my game. I think publishers have been silent a little in India, saying that who are we as gamers? I think the conversation is predominantly been around real money gaming. And what that leads to is, I'm not saying it is right or wrong. It is not my place to do it. It is either the government or constitutional or regulatory or courts. But I do want to understand, the problem is, Michael, sorry, you're a foreigner, you'll not get it, but the statement is valid and I'll translate it for you. I don't want people to say, "Mera beta bigad raha hai kyunki wo gaming karta hai." Right? Which is, my son is doing wrong because he's a gamer. Right? Gaming is for good. Esports is for good. And having that kind of a conversation, if we can have commonality of purpose to go ahead and say, this is what esports stands for, and we are for good, is a commonality I'd love if people can do. And this is at a player level. This is at a team level. This is at a publisher level. This is at a tournament operator level. This is at an OTT level. This is at an investor level. This is at a TO level. Everyone. We need to have a commonality of language that we can get behind. That's one. The second one, which is extremely important, is we need to go ahead and make sure that we are not only about the sport, but about the youth. So stuff around it. Why are we not doing an Indian Idol around gamers? Why are we not going and putting them around as hosts of great content, which is there? Why are we not getting more Harsha Bhogles and everyone else around the world? Right? We need to go ahead and have a lot of content around the content that we are going in. And it's important that we invest in that right now, because if it is just about the esport, it will start falling because you won't get width of OTT coverage. Right? I need 4,000 hours to broadcast something. I can't just keep on doing live sports all the time. And the third one is we need to make sure that we involve women more, either at a viewership level or at a participatory level. We are one sport that does not gender discriminate. Tomorrow you can have 3 women and 2 men playing in the same team. We just saw Evil Geniuses go ahead and do a brilliant program around that. Who says that women are not equal to men? Maybe they're better than men, which is there. A multi-gender team in the same teams will work in our sport. And I think we'll be stronger for it. Which is like, those are the 3 I'd really like to go ahead and say, this is the future look that we can go ahead and put down. As far as the fan viewership in sports as a part of, I think it's about construct, right? We normally look at, most sport comes because you could play it with the community that you are. You're playing Ghatkopar United, you're in Kormangla United, because you had a physical location that you used to get together, and the franchise was normally based on a certain catchment area that you could go ahead and play out of, right? That's how real sports starts in it. The catchment area, unfortunately, in esports is your computer or your phone or your headset. So we've seen actually catchments not being geographical, but communal, and not religiously communal, but we are the Harley Davidson bike loving guys versus you are the Royal Enfield loving guys. And we'll have a tournament between us because that's what unites us for this. Or I'm the Vada Pav gang and you are the Sambar Dosa gang. And it doesn't matter if I'm from Kashmir and I love Vada Pav, or you're from the Northeast and you like Sambar Dosa. It doesn't matter where you are from. It is around communal activities that people will build great teams around, because that's how they'll communicate. That's how they'll have trust. They'll have linkages between them. And that's how we'll build it. We'll not build it on Chennai versus Mumbai. We might, I'm not saying we might not, but I think that has a better way to go and work.
No, so, with that note, I'd like to thank you all for being part of this and taking out time from your really busy schedule. Thank you, Michael, Akshat, Samir, Arvind, all of you all. I truly believe we are at the anvil of something very big and exciting. And hopefully, we'll have more opportunities to talk about it as this whole space just explodes. But thank you all very much. Supratik, any last word if you have?
No, I think it's been a brilliant, very session. I think it's a very future slanted kind of a product that we're talking about. And thank you to everyone. Everyone's pretty much the pioneer in this space. And all the best to everyone. And let's pushing for esports to have that place under the sun.
Yes, guys. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody. That was quite a cool, informative session on the topic that's pretty much invaded all our lives. That's esport. And we sort of, before move on to the last session, can I please request Selby to sort of pose the third question? That's the quiz question. And we'd like to thank Mr. Venki Mesur because he's been kind enough to send all the signed cricket memorabilia. So all you cricket fans, if you follow a bit of cricket, you know what's coming your way. That's the third question. So the trick is very simple. Just answer very quickly. Which sport do you associate Mr. Geet Sethi with? Selby, I'm sure you can sort of tell us who the winner is once you get the answers.
Yeah, we have lots of answers, and the first one comes from Manish. Manish iPhone.
Well, thanks, Manish. Congratulations. And thank you, everybody who participated, but were not so quick as Manish. And Manish, please send in your details to the IMC chamber and they'll